Hey everyone, McGee here. I recently did a post-draft analysis for my team for Clodsire Premier League Season 5. I was very excited about the team I drafted, and during that video I had mentioned that I had hoped to do some post-match recaps for my games this season in that league, and so I'm going to go ahead and start that today. Week 1 is in the books, and I wanted to still continue to talk about this team. So I pulled together some old assets that I had from videos long ago. Doesn't quite match up with the current Potown Fukumuku's team logo, but I think it does the job just fine. So we're going to look back on my week 1 match today, talk about the matchup a little bit, talk about my team prep, and then we'll go through the match itself, and I can talk through some of the more important turns and just kind of talk about my general thoughts and what I'm seeing as that match is playing out. So we'll go ahead and get started here, just kind of looking at the overall team matchups that we got going on. My week 1 match is against Zebstrikemdown, who is continuously one of the strongest coaches in this league, and so it's a very tough way to start that. And then looking just right off the bat at his first draft pick, it's Mega Frostless. For anyone that saw my previous video, and you can see my team now at the bottom of the screen, one of the biggest issues I had talked about with my team was its difficulty with special ice. Especially those with access to freeze dry. Thankfully, Frostless does not have access to freeze dry, but it is one of the more prominent special ice attackers in this meta. I don't have any strong natural resists outside of Palafan, who is not going to do well in that matchup, and so I'm finding myself in an awkward spot just off the first Pokemon. Iron Treads is here, which is a really good answer to both Regieleki and Nihilego. So off the bat, two really difficult Pokemon. Urshifu Single Strike is pretty dangerous as well. I have a Moltres and a Mega Meganium, which does help a lot in restricting its item play, but overall it's still a very dangerous Pokemon to try to deal with. Primarina, looking at it, seems very clearly like a Pokemon that will be used as a counter towards Palafin, just probably likely to run a Rocky Helmet set or something to that effect, and so I'm seeing that right away. Mesprit's an interesting Pokemon, not because it's inherently bad or not desirable, but because if you can look down a few spots further, he also has a Mew on his team. Mew, I think, is superior to Mesprit in every way, and so it's very interesting to have both of them on a draft team. So Mesprit draws some intrigue for me, but because he also has a Mew, I'm not really looking at Mesprit that closely. I just think Mew is the superior Pokemon, and with a solid Dark type on my team, and other solid Pokemon that aren't bothered by the Psychic typing, I just don't see Mesprit as being a particularly viable one, but they have both, and so I'm keeping that in mind. Mandibuzz, who doesn't have a great matchup overall, except maybe addressing Dugtrio and Slitherwing, otherwise just kind of basic defensive bulk. Gouging Fire is a very dangerous Pokemon. Pretty much can threaten me pretty aggressively after a single Dragon Dance. I can do some solid defensive play with Archaludon, but the combination of Flare Blitz and likely Earthquake in this matchup, or actually I take it back, Flare Blitz and probably Dragon Claw would be the most dangerous. Moltres does do a little bit here to help limit the move options for Gouging Fire. He needs Fire to be able to address Mega Meganium. Without it, he can't pressure Mega Meganium at all. And he needs Dragon, otherwise he can't pressure Moltres. So it does restrict the Gouging Fire setup, especially if the intention is to run Morning Sun. And then obviously the Mew we were talking about, and then a couple of one-pointers, although given his name and history, Zebstrika is not a Pokemon to be immediately discarded, and it certainly does have validity in this matchup, especially if he feels I may threaten rain. Obviously Frostless, with its ability to set Snow, puts me in an interesting position week 1 on whether or not I want to run Rain. So looking at that matchup, when I'm prepping for my team build here, I'm not really fond of trying to play a Weather Wars matchup here. I don't need Rain to be effective. I talked about that a lot during when I was doing my post-analysis discussion for my team. It's nice to have it. It's an interesting threat. It forces opponents to respect it, but I'm not tied to it. in order to build an effective and coherent team. And so I'm not really wanting to play that game in this matchup just because of the danger of Frostless here. And I don't want to try to navigate getting Pelipper in and out. Frostless can, when it KO, it has access to Thunderbolt. Bolt Switch alone off of Iron Treads could probably nearly one-hit KO a Pelipper, but he also has access to Supercell Slam. Urshifu has Thunder Punch. Primarina's not really bothered by Pelipper. And then down the line we go. And there's not really a lot Pelipper's doing defensively here. And offensively, I'm not really liking it either. It doesn't quite get to the speed I needed to get past a Frostless, even if I were to Scarf it. So I'm just not really liking what it's bringing here offensively or defensively. Regieleki is obviously hard-walled, really, really hard-walled by Treads. Can't even do neutral damage outside of like Throat Chop. So I'm not liking that. Gouging Fire can also set up on it pretty effectively unless I'm running Asian Power. So I'm not, and then Zebstrike, if he brings it, also has access to Motor Drive. So there's 3 really solid ways he can answer Eleki here, so I'm not really loving any of that. On the other hand, Nihilego is looking promising for me just because it just needs to navigate away from that Treads, and it's a pretty effective mon. So Nihilego is kind of something I'm eyeballing. But Iron Treads really is that defensive backbone here. It's shutting down my Regieleki entirely. It's minimizing the effect of my Nihilego because I can't really do a ton with the Nihilego until I've addressed the Treads. Archaludon doesn't want to switch in on it because the Earthquake damage is dangerous. Pelipper can be very easily KO'd by it despite the typing. And Moltres can be hit by rock moves too, so there's really a lot of danger the Treads poses defensively, just being able to resist some of my primary scary sweeper options, and then just having tools to address a lot of my other Pokemon. Ironhead can really smack Mega Meganium, so it's a Pokemon that's going to be restricted on because it only has 4 moves, but trying to figure out those 4 moves safely is a really big danger for me. And then finally, like I said, my defense can't really withstand his power. Frostless can blast through me pretty quickly because I don't have a good answer for Blizzard at all. Urshifu has the coverage and probably is going to run either Punching Gloves or just play very safe and run Protective Pads to minimize the threat of Moltres. And so it will be able to come around and click buttons, and I can't really switch into that in again. I need to be able to stay on offense because otherwise Urshifu is going to be able to break through me. And then the Gouging Fire is obviously a threat as well. Just needs the 2 moves, the 2 stab moves, and 1 or 2 Dragon Dances, and it can win the game, especially because I'm not bringing Rain. And so the Flare Blitz option can take off very, very quickly. And so that's a lot of offense for me to deal with, plus the wild card that is Mew, and not knowing if that's going to be offensive, defensive, or what kind of set that might be. All of that to say, I am not well positioned to be trying to stay on defense. I got to get on offense as quickly as possible. So that's kind of how I'm building out this team. Do enough defensively to give me a few pivots, but really try to focus in on controlling the flow of the game and trying to have really strong breaker options. So first and foremost, I am bringing Mega Meganium, obviously, running max HP, modest nature. I threw 8 into speed just because the Mandibuzz and the Mesprit speed tie, so if they show up and either of them play a real bulk option, then I'm outspeeding that, or if Primarina's running really fast to try to creep past, hopefully the 8's enough to kind of creep the creep. Solar Beam is the clear and obvious spammable move. Weather Ball is really good for addressing the Frostless and trying to get a 1-hit KO on a predict for that, maybe mid to late game. Synthesis to keep healthy as best I can. Earth Power is essential here to prevent the Gouging Fire from setting up on me freely. Otherwise, I don't think the Dazzling Gleam damage is enough to stop the setup if it's a bulky set. So Earth Power just gives me that breaking power I need. And even though I don't have a strong move for Mandibuzz, the Solar Beam spam is good enough because if Mandibuzz is faster than me, then my Solar Beam damage will eventually turn into neutral as it's clicking a Roost, so I'm willing to play that game. But essentially, I'm just trying to get her in front of the Primarina. I know that's going to be a problem. I expect it to be a very defensive Primarina, or get it in front of the Treads if I'm at full health, because again, dealing with that Treads opens up my game a lot. So I'm just trying to create a few opportunities for it to come in and be effective as a solar beam spammer. It's clearly carrying the Meganiumite because it needs to. Next up is the Palafin running a Jolly Nature because the the Mew is also base 100 and the Urshifu is 97. So if I'm needing to deal with sucker punches or just speed tying the Mew, I want to make sure I'm in a position to do that. So 252 attack for, I think, special defense or defense. It's not really relevant. 252 speed with a choice band. So I'm really just shooting for maximum damage output here, especially if I'm able to deal with that Primarina. Then the wave crashes are deadly. The jet punches clean up really well. Flip turn for mobility. So I'm trying to just use it as a mobile Pokemon early to mid game, and then have the opportunity to maybe use it late game to just clean up because it has that jet punch for cleanup or the wave crash just to break past a few things if I'm in that position. Next up is Moltres, kind of a basic bulk setup here. 248 HP, 252 defense, 8 special attack, Flamethrower, Roost, Defog, U-turn. I'm not running Hurricane here. I'm really not giving myself any option to deal with Gouging Fire with this. I don't see it being able to do that effectively. I'm relying on the Hurricanes to hit consecutively and probably inflict confusion, and I'm not optimistic about that playing out well, so I'm not really leaning into that. I'd rather have mobility to get in front of an Urshifu and predictably force that out and get a nice safe U-turn. Same thing with maybe Frostless, where it doesn't feel like it has enough to one-hit KO the Moltres. I can predictably force it out, or if I'm able to scout Treads effectively and determine that it doesn't have a rock move or that it's choice locked, then again I can get a predictive U-turn on all of those. So I'm opting for mobility over Hurricane here, just because I feel like I need to be able to control the battle as much as possible at all times. So that's kind of where I'm angling with the Moltres. Next up is Nihilego, who is going to run 232 HP, 36 special attack, 8 special defense, and then 232 speed, and it's going to run that Assault Vest to give it some bulk that it needs. With the setup it has, speed is its highest stat, so any KOs will boost its speed. I wanted to give it as much special defense as I could, but I needed to have a little bit of firepower on the special attack side still, just because I want Nihilego to have the opportunity to be able to clean up late game and be able to put out the damage it needs to put out to do that. So Sludge Bomb, Dazzling Gleam, Power Gem, all very clear and obvious what they want to do with those moves. And then Foul Play is to try to catch some Treads switch-ins and do some solid damage that way. In case it's an AV, Treads especially, Grass Knot's not going to really chunk it the way I need to, but Foul Play will do a little bit better with the damage output, so helps there. And then possibly with Mew too, if Mew is like a Swords Dance set or something like that, Foul Play just gives me an option to maybe one-hit KO that I wouldn't have gotten through anything else. So just trying to do what I can there, but really it's meant to be my switch in 1, 2 at most, really 1 or 2 times switching in on Frostless, forcing it out, and then trying to reassert field control from there. But if I'm able to deal with Treads, this thing actually does have sweet potential, just because Treads is really the only thing that can switch in on those 3 attacks. Everything else is getting hit pretty much for super effective damage. So I'm really optimistic about the potential for Nihilego here. It just has so much to do that it could fall apart and do nothing. Next up is my Slitherwing, running an Adamant Nature, 48 HP, 252 attack with an Adamant Nature, like I said, 4, I believe, defense, and then 204 speed with a Choice Scarf, which gives me just enough to outspeed Frostless by 1 point so that I can be faster than it. U-turn again because of the mobility we're talking about. Flare Blitz just to have a good option for Frostless. Close Combat for also a good option against Iron Treads and Urshifu. And then Earthquake to have something a little more spammable overall. Something that also helps me address Gouging Fire for as much damage as possible so that it hopefully doesn't have the opportunity to set up and take off against me. But really I'm just kind of valuing Slitherwing here as good speed control, a good way to reset and force things off the battlefield, especially Urshifu, who can threaten really hard, or Mew, who could threaten really hard if it's trying to do some sort of Calm Mind or nasty plot set. I can pivot in on it, get a U-turn to force it out, or KO it if it stays in, and then reset and try to control the field again and again. And then the final Pokemon on my team is Dugtrio, which is a great Pokemon to have with all of this mobility. If it's able to get on the field, it can trap and KO a few things. Ideally, treads. If it gets in safely on an unboosted Gouging Fire, it can do the same there, or it can clean up a Primarina later in the game after it's been chunked down. So I'm really trying most of all to trap and eliminate the treads or the Gouging Fire here. Treads because it will enable Nihilego to potentially sweep, just because that's really the only strong, reliable answer to Nihilego. And so I want to take advantage of that. He is holding a Life Orb, by the way. I don't want to be locked into an attack here. I want to be able to get really strong Earthquake damage, but still have the opportunity to Sucker Punch or Stone Edge or whatever the case is in case something else comes in afterwards, or if the Treads has a Shut Shell and is able to leave the field. I don't want to be locked in on an Earthquake against a Mandibuzz, so I want to have some opportunities there to do something else. And then if it's able to actually address one or both of those things, I want to be able to put some Stealth Rocks up. It helps with the Frostless pivots, limits the chances that gets to come on the field again. And so if I'm able to get a kill on Treads and get rocks up, then Dugtrio has more than done its job in this matchup. So that's the team. Those are the 6 Pokemon I'm angling for. I'm expecting to see really the first 4, no doubt. Primarina has to come. Urshifu does really strong. Treads has to answer 2 things defensively. Frostless is a great Pokemon in the matchup. And then I don't expect Mesprit for reasons I already talked about. I think it's redundant to Mew. I don't expect Swalot because it's pretty useless in this matchup. So it comes down to Mandibuzz, Gouging, and Zebstrika. I expect Mew to be there. So between those 3, I'm trying to figure out who it is. If he's thinking I'm running Rain, then probably he leaves Gouging Fire behind. If he's thinking I might not run Rain, then Gouging Fire comes. I don't think Zebstrika is likely to come just because he has good enough answers to Regieleki. It doesn't need to. And so it's probably between Mandibuzz and Gouging Fire here. And if I were to guess, I would have guessed Gouging Fire from a pregame analysis. So let me switch over to the match itself. And we can see in the matchup, 5 of the 6 are very clear and obvious. No surprises for me. The Mandibuzz is a little bit. It doesn't do a ton defensively in this matchup overall, I feel. But if his concern was, Slitherwing maybe coming in and being threatening a Brave Bird, Mandibuzz does a lot there to help prevent that. Or if he's just worried about the Palafin taking off, again, Mandibuzz helps to prevent that with foul play, so I can't just bulk up to infinity. It can address some of that. Or Dugtrio, who is here. Mandibuzz does overall address pretty well. Stone Edge, even from a Life Orb, Dugtrio isn't going to do explosive damage to it, and it's going to be able to one-hit KO pretty much with foul play. So Mandibuzz makes sense in this matchup. I think Gouging Fire is scarier for me, but from a defensive standpoint, Mandibuzz was a sensible pick. So looking at this in team preview, no real surprises. I do have an awkward spot with this team where I need to get 2 things to happen as early as possible. I need to get a Palafin turn to enable the ability so it can switch over to hero mode, and I do need to find a turn to get Meganium in safely so that it can Mega Evolve and have some helpful resists in this matchup, especially when we're talking Urshifu, so getting resists to both of his stab options is important, even though I expect him to carry Poison Jab in this matchup. Just being able to switch in on it, especially if it's choice locked, would be very, very helpful. So to my mind, I want to get the Palafin enabled as quickly as possible. So I'm going to lead Palafin in this matchup, and I'll pause it throughout. So I lead Palafin. He calls it very smartly with Primarina. It's a very strong, safe lead. He's expecting a Palafin lead because it's a very common thing people do when they have Palafin and drafted. They just lead at turn 1. It's kind of brain dead, and so I'm being punished a little bit for that. I'm very confident this is going to be a bulky Primarina, and so I want to use my first turn to confirm what's going on. So I'm going to flip turn on that just to see. I see Rocky Helmet, no surprises, fully expect that. Problem is he's going to flip turn on me, which is a very safe and easy thing to do for his Primarina. I knew it was likely to come, but I had no safe switch in other than Meganium, so I kind of just have to eat that damage. I couldn't risk it being a Moonblast, and so I couldn't send out Slitherwing, so it was just kind of Meganium was eating this, which is going to give him a very free turn to Frostless here. No surprise. So it forces my Nihilego early on. Not desirable. I'll eat the damage fine. I know he's going to switch out seeing that damage calc. So it's a very safe foul play for me here to just chunk Iron Treads a little bit. I'm going to pivot to Slitherwing. I'm unsure what to expect. No surprise. Oops. Clicking the wrong button. He's going to Earthquake here. It's very safe damage. I didn't want to go Moltres with the concern of a rock move coming out and being a very easy predict that Moltres might try to come in on treads. I did not want to risk that on this turn. And so it felt safer to go into Slithering and kind of scout that out. I didn't think he was going to click Ironhead just because, again, the Moltres exists. So I scout with Slithering. I know I'm likely to outspeed it. I don't think it's going to be a choice-locked Iron Treads, but I'll get on that. I'll be able to click U-turn on a predictive switch out from him because he doesn't want to take a close combat. So I get Nihilego back in again. I'm not sure if he's going to switch, so I take a gamble here and I click Power Gem. Incorrect call, so I get that wrong. He Ironheads this time, expecting me to go back to Slitherwing, which I don't. I go to Meganium here. I am going to not Mega Evolve here because I don't want to take an Ironhead super effective damage. I'd rather do it safely like this on the Mega Evolved. So now I will Mega Evolve safely. I'm already full health. Mew's gone for the Psychic Noise. I think maybe fearing a Leech Seed or something to that effect. And so I'm going to Solar Beam here. Mew is very bulky, which is good for me. That tells me that this Mew is probably not going to be setting up on me, and then the Volt Switch just confirms that. So he's also playing a similar game where he's got Treads with Pivot, he's got Mew with Pivot, he's got Primarina with Pivot, likely has Mandibuzz with Pivot, so he's also playing a very similar game to me right now of trying to control field play. Thus far, it's pretty even overall. I've been able to chunk the Mew for decent damage. I've been able to scout out the Primarina and the Treads a little bit and get some chunks on them. He's also done pretty sizable damage to my Slitherwing, and my Nihiligo's taken one of its only 2 safe entries in for the Blizzard. And so he sends Mandibuzz in here, which makes sense. He doesn't want to take a Solar Beam for his Frostless, and so he's not going to send that in hard. I Weather Ball here, I Solar Beam again. I was incorrect. I Solar Beam here, hoping to get the roll. The roll does not happen. I seem to cap out around 50%. I Weather Ball here, thinking he might hard switch into Frostless, trying to tank a hit. I was incorrect. So I'm going to keep Solar Beaming here, keep Mew low, either to keep it in range for Dugtrio or just make it low enough where I can reliably U-turn with Slitherwing or try to get a KO that way. He seems to be playing the Roost game. I'm going to just try to call that out and stop it. Go for a U-turn here because Mew's going to force out. Frostless comes in, takes a decent chunk. Nihiligo comes in again. He has to respect Nihiligo because I'm bulky enough to survive. I go for a foul play because, again, I feel it's safe. So I'm going to go to Moltres here. He's gone Earthquake once, Ironhead once, not threaten a Rock Attack, so I don't think he's likely to threaten a Rock Attack here. He might Volt Switch on me, but he's probably trying to address this Nihiligo because if he addresses that, then Frostless pretty much takes care of me the rest of the game. So he wants to get this Nihiligo out of play as soon as possible. That's his goal. So I think Moltres is safe here. I'm right. It's Earthquake. I've already confirmed earlier in the game that this is not a choice locked. He did an Ironhead into a Volt Switch, so I know it's not choice locked. So one of 2 things is going to happen on this next turn. He's either going to click a rock move because he has one still saved from Moltres, or he's going to try to Volt Switch out and reestablish field control. So I'm going to be very aggressive on that, and I'm going to call it with my Dugtrio because I thought in either scenario, Dugtrio will tank the hit. I know Dugtrio will outspeed because he is not choice locked, and at that health range, even if he is Shookaberry, Earthquake with a Life Orb will do enough damage to KO. So it's just a matter of whether or not this is a Shed Shell Iron Treads, because if it's not, this felt like a very safe way to get Dugtrio in to get a free kill on the best defensive piece he had for Nihiligo. And so I make that call. I was right. I caught the Volt Switch. He was Shookaberry, but again, his health was too low to be able to tank that. So now Treads is out of play, which is really all I needed Dugtrio to do in this matchup. He did not bring Gouging Fire, and so Dugtrio doesn't need to be able to address that. Primarina's too healthy right now for Earthquake to really threaten to kill. And I'm not going to really put any sizable damage on the Urshifu or the Mandibuzz. And so at this point, the best thing I can do is to punish his momentum and continue to take advantage of mine. And the best way to do that is put rocks in the field because Frostless is going to always eat 25%. Primarina is always going to eat 12 without getting health back. And if I can keep that Mandibuzz, who is currently at 46%, unable to get a roost, then I can prevent it from defogging. So I have enough speed on my team where it doesn't have very many good windows to do that defog. And so I just need to try to control field momentum here, and Stealth Rocks is the best way to do it. So I don't know what this Urshifu is. Like I said, my guess going into the matchup was that it was going to be Protective Pads or Punching Glove because it had to have an answer for Moltres. And so I felt pretty confident that I could Stealth Rock safely there, and he couldn't Sucker Punch the Stealth Rock. So it felt like a really safe way to do one more valuable thing with Dugtrio before going to the grave, and then again reestablishing field control. And so that's what I do. I let Dugtrio go down. Slitherwing comes in. Slitherwing threatens to close combat to a kill, so I can do it that way, or I can do what I'm doing right now and just pivot again, reestablish field control, and keep playing that cycle. Palafin comes in, cleans up the KO, so that's really, really good for me, feeling really strong. I send in a Slitherwing because I know that's, from a speed perspective, it's the fastest thing on the field. I am very confident. Actually, I know at this point Urshifu is not Choice Scarfed. So I know Slitherwing is the fastest. I know it's likely to bring in Primarina, but if I can chunk that down bit by bit without having Palafin be the one to do it, then Palafin can probably close out this game with Wave Crashes or Jet Punches. So I just need to address this Primarina, and I'm in a really good spot. So I'll take the U-turn chunk. I can live with it. I'm going to send Mega Meganium in, who I know is going to be victim of the flip turn. And then he's going to send in the Urshifu because that's a good option. I'm okay sending Moltres in at this point, even if it's a rock move, because I feel like at this point I can take that sack and be okay and continue to control the game flow. He goes for Poison Jab, so he was trying to address the Mega Meganium straight up. Smart move. I just was able to switch out on that. I'm going to continue to pivot around because I don't need to KO anything on the field like that. I can just continue to control momentum and gather KOs like this. So Slitherwing comes in, addresses the Mew, who was the only thing really able to take a hit from Nihilego. It had enough bulk to do it. Foul Play was, based on the fact that it was running special attacks, Foul Play was likely not to chunk it majorly hard. So it probably would have had a survivability on a hit, but the remaining three do not. I have Dazzling Gleam for the Urshifu, I have Sludge Bomb for the Primarina, and then I Power Gem for the Frostless. So I put him in a really tough spot here. He's going to send out Urshifu, who is not surprising to see. I probably on this turn should respect the potential for Sucker Punch. It would be the cautious thing to do, but I'm feeling really good about my position at this point in the game. Even if I'm wrong on that play and he does Sucker Punch, I just come in with I come in with Moltres and click U-turn again. It probably baits out Primarina, and then I come in with my Mega Meganium and click Solar Beam and something is getting sacked. So I have the Mon advantage. I talked about this during my post-team analysis. My team is really well built to take a 1 or 2 Mon advantage and then just start playing the trade-off game. I don't need to overthink things at this stage in the game is how I feel. I feel like I'm in a really good controlling position. If Urshifu is not Sucker Punch, then I Dazzling Gleam and the game is definitely over. I'll get a speed boost and I'll win the game. If I'm wrong, I have more than enough solutions to continue to pressure his Pokemon and get enough pivots that Jet Punch Palafin will still win the game later. Frostless is going to come in at a little over 50% health, even though it'll get the boost from Snow. I think Choice Banded Jet Punch probably does enough at that point outright. So I feel like I'm okay, regardless of whether or not Urshifu Sucker Punch is here. It doesn't, as we're seeing right now. Dazzling Gleam gets the KO. I get the speed boost. There's really nothing left to be done unless it was like an Aqua Jet Primarina. I'm going to Power Gem safely here, clean up that KO, and then Primarina is going to come in and get eaten by the Sludge Bomb. And that'll be the game. So the game went really, really well for me, obviously. A 5-0 win in Week 1 is about as good as you could hope for. Certainly there were flaws in my team that were exposed or threatened to be exposed in this first match. I talked about that special ice matchup. I think he missed some opportunities to get that Frostless in a couple more times and threaten with it and chunk the Nihilego down because, again, Nihilego took 30% from the first one, which means I really only had one more hard switch in, and then that was it. Otherwise, I can only send Nihilego in as a revenge killer at that point in the game against a Frostless, where Frostless KO'd something else, then Nihilego could come in safely at that 40% health and force it out, or maybe it doesn't, and Frostless just tries to chunk it down again. Either way, that Frostless was a lot of danger for me, and I had to use Nihilego in a very specific way in this matchup to try to navigate that. He, in post-game chat, prepped very hard for the rain mode, which I did not bring. So he had very little confidence in Gouging Fire's ability to sweep me in rain, which is entirely sensible, which is probably the reason it stayed home. He probably had a lot of answers to Pelipper, probably had some concerns about Archaludon being a threat here as well. And so he probably brought Mandibuzz and Mew in part to address those. And then he also had some concerns about Obstagoon. So overall, it came down to he picked the wrong things to over prep for, and then Nihilego only had to break through the one thing, and it was home free for it. And so that just, I think, speaks to what I was hoping to accomplish with this team, which was it's very difficult to pick what version of it you want to try to prep for. You can't prep for all the versions, and otherwise you spread your defenses too thin, or you just don't play any offense at all. If you try to address Nihilego with your steals, and you try to address Regieleki with your grounds, and you try to address the threat of Dugtrio with shed shells, you just start running out of offensive play. And so you have to pick your battles on what you want to really focus in on and what's going to really threaten to break you apart. It's kind of how I envision this team. And through week one, I think it's playing that way. I was very happy with the results, obviously. Zebstrikemdown is obviously no slouch. He had some really good prep. He had some really good plans. I was able to control the flow of that game with a lot of U-turns and a lot of flip turns to just keep the field in my favor. And then those stealth rocks with the Dugtrio, I think, really helped to seal it after he took down that Iron Treads. That was kind of the turn I think it all really went my way. So I improved to 1-0 in this league. I'm facing, not in week 2, but in week 3, I face another special ice. So I'm having that stare me down the barrel as well. I think it's Iron Bundle, who is my most feared Pokemon to deal with for this team. It just really breaks me apart. So I'm not looking forward to that, but I get a little bit of a reprieve in week 2. I don't think they have an ice type, so maybe a little less pressure on that front, but certainly got to look at new ways to utilize some of my team members. Nihilego doesn't want to be an AV Pokemon every week, so I got to be careful about that. I'm hoping to get Regieleki or the rain mode in there sooner rather than later, just to make sure the whole team feels like it's relevant and being threatened at a week-to-week basis. I want to make sure every member is represented as early as possible, so that opponents really feel the pressure that I might bring anybody. Even the Claydol, I got to find a way to bring him out. I heard some interesting chatter about him during the Clodsire PRs about some fun offensive sets I had not really considered, and now I'm going to give a little more serious thought on how I might try to incorporate those into my gameplay. But overall, 1-0, +5. I'm very happy with how the team's playing. A little bum Mega Meganium did not do much here, but the prep around Mega Meganium certainly opened things up for other Pokemon to thrive and shine. So Nihilego is my early kill leader, doing what I was hoping it would do as being a potential sweep option. So that is it for me for this week. Stay tuned for week 2, where I will break down that match and hopefully continue the record at 2-0, but we shall see. All right, take care.